Welcome back. While modern poetry in the 21st century has adopted a more favorable style towards free verses and a greater emphasis on artistic expressions, it has evolved with features like disrupted or unkempt syntax or irregular stanzas. And now joining us is a poet and the founder of Frankly Speaking, and that is Franklin Shitaleni. Or do you want me to call you Freestyle Franklin?
So they usually call me Northside Rabbi. But
Oh, no, Northside Rabbi. Okay, I think Northside Rabbi will do. How are you, Northside Rabbi?
I'm doing very good. How are you?
I'm good. It's such a long name.
I know, and again, it's not like there's nothing deep to it. It's just that.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, poetry is such a magnificent thing, and I don't think each and everybody understands what poetry is.
Yeah.
But just give us a short poem before we start off with our interview.
A short poem before we start our interview.
Yeah. The
Okay.
freestyles, the stanzas.
Okay, cool. So her first name is Wu, and her second name is Men, but her surname is synonymous with death, it seems. Victimization faster than neighborhood watch in a white neighborhood, and we are quick to tell you death states, but look at the death it breeds. At some point, in the days of Kakurukade Munguda, we dwelt in the land of queens, and how loud should the blood of the innocent be before freedom hears? Because my testosterone levels are toxically raised to erase and laid to waste the ideology of she was asking for it with the skimpy skirt down her waist, and every time she leaves home, her eulogy is prepared because who knows, whoever she interacts with might just be another basket case.
One word, deep. That is really, really deep, Franklin. All right. I mean, you're here to join us to talk about Frankly Speaking. And Frankly Speaking, you know, is all about poems. And it's turning 2 years old now. Talk to us about the journey since its inception.
Man, so Frankly Speaking was basically inspired from events that, such as open mic and spoken word. And these are guys like Ashwin Berry who hosted events back in the day. Because, you know, the culture of poetry in Namibia is so small. In that, you know, there was like a circulation of the same poets. And so my good friend and I, Frida, we then thought, why don't we create a platform that allows for poetry to matriculate bi-monthly? You know what I mean? And so Frankly Speaking was then born. The idea is, frankly speaking, it's in the voice. That we stand on this idea that in order to be able to think, you must risk being offensive. And that's kind of what poetry is. You know what I mean? Like, there cannot be, what do you call it, like a control over how you express the art. And it's grown very well exponentially because we went from 2 poets, now we have about 4 associate poets.
All
which is
right.
brilliant.
Now, for a minute there, I thought you were giving me a poem, but you're actually answering my question. All right, now talk to us about the preservation of local literature and the perpetuations of, you know, the craft of this platform. How do you form up art in this?
You know, I've always thought, you know, I think about, I personally, this is just my opinion, I think the great Nangili Nashima, for example, was a poet. I believe that to be true. The problem is that we do not have a system in place locally that archives this work. If you go online right now and search for Namibian poetry, you most possibly are not going to get something that's clear and proper. And so what we're trying to do is document the poetry in word and in video format such that, you know, it's accessible to other people. I think about a month ago, a student from a literature class at UNAM asked for one of my pieces that they could do their thesis on, and that's really what we want. The Namibian narrative, the Namibian story, told by a Namibian and preserved as well by a Namibian. That's really the idea. If we can preserve this material, we can make them available for the future.
All right, now let's talk about the inspiration of your poem. Let's focus on this specific one that you started off the show with.
Yeah.
It was a really, really deep one. So what inspired it?
So the piece is called The Womb Man. It's like a word play from woman. So she carries a womb. So it's Womb Man. The piece is about 8 minutes long. So I write pieces that very politically motivated. I deal with issues like existential crisis. I deal with issues like identity politics and such. And so this piece I wrote in the wake of the Shannon story. And I mean, before Shannon, we've had people like Jonita Mabula, yo Avihe. And so this became sort of a combination of thoughts that I then put on paper. And so it was not necessarily to scream in the face of the opposite gender, but it's to address an issue that I think has eroded the moral fabric of the nation. And honestly, I didn't even think it was going to be that big an issue. So now my type of style is this: if I write a piece, I need to memorize it. And so I learned to memorize the piece for like a good 8 minutes. But a lot goes into writing poetry because you've got to know your stats, you've got to know your facts, you've got to read, obviously. And so that really is the idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Frankly Speaking has only been hosted in Fintech. Do you guys plan on, you know, going out to other towns and also, you know, taking the culture of poetry there?
You know, we've actually had invites outside, but the other thing that we started to do is we also host Frankly Speaking on NBC National FM, like a radio version. And the beauty with the radio show, the radio Frankly Speaking, is that people actually have the privilege, or at least the opportunity to call in and do their pieces. In fact, I think a month ago we got a letter from a gentleman, and it's okay. He said I could use this as a sort of a brief. This gentleman wrote us from a correctional facility. He's doing time for murder for 16 years, and he listened to the program enough, and he was inspired to write to us. And so that's kind of really the idea of Frankly Speaking. If you can impact one, you've impacted a lot. That's really the idea.
All right. Now, Frankly Speaking is turning 2 years old. Call it 2 years old, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when will it be happening? Where will it be happening? All the nitty-gritty details.
Yeah, so it's going to be happening on the 28th of October, which is this coming Friday at 1800 hours. It's at a place called Anna's Kloofenberg's Wine Shop. It's basically in Klein Windhoek, where the news bar is. If you're there, you basically find it. What we want to do with this evening is that it's going to be a plethora of poets, and it's going to be very themed. It's a birthday, so you need to look like it's a birthday. It's very important. So it's myself, Frida, 44 times officially poetic, Mr. Poet, and Anilo Poet. And so those are the associate poets. But this Friday, ultimately, but I won't lie, we've had quite a good support, and I think this Friday we might have an overwhelming support. I'm anticipating for that.
All right, Franklin, thank you so much for joining us, and also for that educational speak on poetry.
Thank you so much.
All right. That was Franklin Chiteleni, or rather, Northside Rabbi, talking to us about Frankly Speaking, which is set to turn 2 years old, and they'll be having an event on the 28th of October. What is the venue again? Anna Kloofensberg. All right. Well, that also wraps up today's edition of the Daily Roundup. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place.